How's it going, YouTube? Today we have a Br600 leaf blower that I'm gonna try to reassemble. I took it all apart. It had a bad cylinder and piston in it. I was able to get the motor rebuilt. I put a new piston in there, new seals, gaskets, new push rods, and rocker arms. The cylinder actually was okay. I just got it honed over a little bit. It's the OEM cylinder, so I'm going to try to reassemble this whole thing. I took it apart months ago, and I didn't really take any pictures of it, so this video might be more so to help me rather than help you guys, but everything is here. All the bolts and stuff are there. So let's try an attempt to put this back together. All right, so I'm learning as I go. So this is the backing plate that goes on the end of the housing there. So this actually gets flipped over, okay? And your motor goes in like this. Now you put your flywheel on. Make sure that clips on like that. You gotta get your flywheel nut and tighten that down. And then you gotta get your 4 bolts for your motor. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're wondering which bolts go in where, so your motor goes on the top, the end here like this. I already have one bolt holding it in, but the ones that go in are these longer fine thread bolts. There's only 4. The rest are different thread, as you can see. They're longer, they're different thread. So they just thread in here like this. And they go in through the back. They don't go through here. They thread in through the back, so it's flush with the hole there. So I'll get your, I think it's a Torx 25 or a 30, and then just tighten those bad boys down. And I'll show you guys the next step. Okay, I also organized all my bolts. I'm pretty sure that these two big, these dark black ones are for the exhaust. Washers, there's a grommet. I'm pretty sure this is for like the back plate. These are for the main screws for here. I remember that. These are for the padding on your back. Remember that. And then I have to look up what these are for. I think these are for the plastic grommets that go on the front here. I'm pretty sure there's like a shield that goes around here. Yeah, this thing. Pretty sure this goes like this somehow. And then the bolts for that are I think, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure with these ones, but I'll have to double check the diagram. All right, so this back plate goes on here like this. I guess it's just like a shield type thing. And there's a little groove here, it just sits on the side there. So one bolt is these self-tapping, weird looking thread ones. These ones always go into the plastic. And then this one, your fine thread, goes into the block here. So tighten those back down, and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, next thing, we'll bolt on the muffler here. So that just goes up here like this. There's one, 2, and then the third bolt goes in the side here. And that goes into the block, I believe, right here, right? Yeah, something like that. So it goes like that. So let's bolt that up. Okay, now that the muffler is bolted on, I'm gonna check the screen here and make sure that that's clean. It's really easy to get to. Just need a flathead or a T20 and take up the 2 bolts here, and then this little piece will just come right off. So here's the screen. As you can see right through it. There's no carbon buildup, so this just sits inside this right here like that. And then this just slides on here like so. And then the bolts go around the 2 hooks to keep it in place. All right, so next your flywheel goes on, okay? I don't know where I put the nut. I gotta look for it. If I can't find it, I either gotta order one, grab one from a parts unit, and put it on. And then your coil is attached to your long tube here. Your coil goes on like this. It just sits in here like this. And then you put your 2 bolts in. You gotta find out where your ground goes. The ground goes underneath here somewhere. But it goes like that. And then you gotta gap your coil and your flywheel properly. So right now we're gonna have to stop. I'm gonna have to find the nut for the flywheel here. So I'll get back to you in the next part. All right, so the coil's in place, the ground goes there, and then the wires, so they get tucked in. There's a little slot here on the plastic, and it just gets pushed in like that. Just so it's tucked in and out of the way. Now I gotta find the nut here so I can properly time this thing. So either let's go find it or get one from the hardware store that's the same thread as this. Well, it looks like I lost it, so I have to look up the part number for this, get the thread, go to the hardware store, pick one up, come back in. All right, we got lucky here. I didn't find it at the hardware store, but I did have a spare FS110 parts engine that I had some person put straight gas in it, and I kept it completely solid, but I took the nut off of this flywheel, and it's the same size as this one. Now, for future reference, there's a lot of interchangeable parts between the 110 and the 600 leaf blower. It's got the same valve train, it's got the same crank, it's got the same hardware, obviously, it's got the same, I forget what this is called, the cam gear cover, same everything, same valve cover. So whatever you get for the 110 is usually cheaper for the 600 because it's the same parts, same seals, same engine components. Only thing different is the size of the piston and the actual valves itself, but everything else is very interchangeable. Now we have the bolt or the nut. Now let's put the flywheel on, torque it to spec, and then we could set the valves in it. All right, so the coil's in, everything's tightened down, the flywheel's on, the coil is properly gapped. I'll show you guys how to do that in a proper video. But you basically just put a business card in the middle there where the magnets are, and then tighten down those two bolts, and then push this forward and make sure that your magnets don't hit there. I think it's 10,000ths of an inch gap, but I'll have to look up the specs. So now you connect the boot, make it easier for you, and then that piece goes on this piece, I believe. All the bolts, I think there's 8 bolts that go around to hold it in place, and then the air box gets bolted on the side here with the carb. But first, before I do that, I'm going to clean up all that, get it all nice and clean, and then put it on. All right, so the backing plate goes on the back of it. You tighten that bolt down. Reverse thread, by the way, it tells you which way to tighten. And then all these little bolts go all the way around the area. Now I'm going to tighten all the bolts down, and I'll get back to you guys in the next part. All right, so now we're at this stage. I put on the air box, the carb, the intake boot, tightened everything down. Actually, you guys have to remove that one cover that goes on here. You have to remove this. This goes on afterwards because I realized that there was a gap between here and none of the bolts would fit. So I was like, what the heck's going on here? So this gap is actually for the spacer that's built into the intake, or the intake. Now this gets wrapped over this white piece. It's really hard to do this one-handed, but this gets wrapped over like that, and then this just fits in here. Now it's gonna be a snug fit because the intake boot, there's a grommet on it, and the grommet has to fit in the cut of the plastic, so everything's airtight. All right, the really hard part, there's some springs on the back on each corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 springs that have to fit into this housing right here, and that is really hard. You have to maneuver the springs and get them in the spot. As you can see, my arm is all roughed up from it, but it's in. Now gently I'm going to flip this over, grab the bolts, and screw them in so that it doesn't move. And then the easy part is just installing the cushions for your back, and then the cover, and then like the hose and the small stuff like that. But most of it is done. So I'm going to flip this over and put the bolts in from the back. All right, so now that they're all bolted in, I should be able to flip this over. And it vibrates a little bit because it's normal, but this is what I was talking about. All the springs need to go into the designated slots. And that is, there's no room really to do it. So you have to stick your hand in there, unless if you take out the clips for this. But then there's a chance of breaking them, so I said screw it. I'm going to put my hand in there and just push all the pins in. Now you have to connect the throttle, which is pretty easy. It just wraps around here and it fits in the hole right there. Connect your spark plug, put your cover on, and then the last part is to bolt up all the padding for your back here. So pretty straightforward. There's a little clip kind of thing on the pads here, and then you just line them up with the holes, and then these are the bolts that you use to keep them in place. All right, so I put everything back on, and then I realized when I gave it gas, it wasn't working. Like when I gave it the trigger, it wasn't really moving. So I have this in the right spot. This little nub goes down, but the throttle cable, I didn't put it in this slot here, so it didn't have enough slack to pull the butterfly down. So now when I give it throttle, it actually moves like it's supposed to. So if you ever come across that, make sure that your throttle cable is actually positioned inside of this groove on the intake. So now this just goes back here like this. I have this and I push it around, kind of like tuck it in there, and then I just push this all back together, making sure that everything is still together there. And then I grab my Stihl screwdriver here and I put the bolt in. It's really hard to do left-handed and especially with my one hand, but put the bolt in, just hold it in place, make sure everything is snug, make sure everything's lined up. One bolt goes there, two on the carb, and one over here on this plate. And then we'll put the air filter back on, the air filter cover, put the padding back on, and then the orange cover that goes across. Everything's bolted on. This is the air filter that came with it. I already ordered a new one because this one's quite dirty. But for now, for the time being, I'm just going to put it on. Make sure that the sponge goes all in the grooves. Grab your air filter cover, and it can only go one way. Make sure that all the grooves and where the screws go match up. And then grab your Stihl screwdriver or your T25 and just tighten the bolt in place. There's another bolt down here. All right, guys, it's all back together. The padding is all back on. All the bolts are in. There's no leftover bolts. I have a tune-up kit with fresh fuel filters. I'm going to flush the tank, put in new fuel. I'm going to do 40 to 1 for a break-in process. Let it go through one tank of gas with the new piston in there, and then I'll put in 50 to 1 for the recommended fuel. Honestly, I don't know how I put this thing together. I don't remember how I took it apart, but it's all back together. Everything turns over properly. So flush it all out, put in new fresh gas, make sure everything's all cleaned up, and then see how this thing runs. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you could leave a like, comment, and subscribe, I'll get you guys back in another small engine video. See ya.